Hi guys, Lee here from FPL Family, and we're back with another deep dive video. Every single team in the Premier League covered between now and the end of the season. Go and check out the Arsenal, Brentford, Chelsea. We're at E on Everton, right? So any team that starts with a letter before E is already live on the channel. So go check those out. But today we are talking toffees. We're going to be talking about Everton and their new manager, Rafa Benitez. As a Liverpool fan, kind of interested to see that one happen, and I know it's got a bit of a mixed reaction out there from the Toffees faithful, but listen, Rafa is a top manager, no doubt about it, and I'm expecting him to get off to a good start at Everton. In fact, I think he's going to need to get off to a good start at Everton, because otherwise the fans are going to be all over him if he doesn't. And one of the things I want to talk about from an FPL perspective is the fact that their fixtures give them the opportunity to do just that. If you go to the Fantasy Football Scout website, go to the front page, have a look at the fixture ticker on the right-hand side. And of course, if you remember, you can sort by difficulty, both in attack and defence, or just overall. But if you sort by overall, and I did this initially for the first 5 fixtures, as is the default on the front page of the FF Scout website, and Everton were right up there. But I then sort of started pressing the plus button to see how many more weeks I could go. And in spite of that week 7 there, away at Old Trafford, which clearly is going to be a difficult game for them, outside of that, the first 10 game weeks for Everton, if you sort by difficulty, look really, really good. They look the best in the league. And of course, if you disagree with that, you can play around with the ticker, you can change what you consider to be the difficulty rating of certain games, and maybe you come up with Watford or Leeds or maybe even Wolves and Arsenal. But there is no doubt that Everton have got a sensational start. So from a fixtures perspective, purely fixtures, you've got to be looking at these guys. And as I said before, Rafa's going to have to get off to a good start. Be very interesting to see what sort of formation Rafa plays at Everton. Is he going to go with his kind of 5-4-1 that he played when he was in charge at Newcastle last time out in the Premier League? I'm not sure. My personal opinion is that he might go back to the 4-2-3-1 setup that he had at Liverpool, where he played the 3 behind the likes of Torres, etc. at Liverpool. I think he'll go for that. And I think he's adopted more the latter than the 5-4-1. He's played more the 4-2-3-1 other clubs he's been to. So, I don't know. Let's see what happens. But I think the 4-2-3-1 is probably the way that Benitez is going to set up. One thing's for sure, he's going to need to look at their home form, particularly from a defensive perspective. Just 3 home clean sheets, which I think was second worst in the league for Everton last season. So they're going to have to improve upon that. And if you're going to pick players like Digne, like Michael Keane, like maybe Ben White, who's been linked also with Everton in the last few weeks, and at time of recording, we're not sure whether he's going to Arsenal, Everton, or maybe staying at Brighton. Let's see. But certainly Rafa's going to have to get more out of them defensively at home. Just 3 clean sheets is not good enough. And actually, even from an attacking perspective, probably a bit too reliant on the England man Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He is 8 million this season. I'll be talking about him a bit more in just a second, the specific players that I'll be looking at going into the new season. But he scored so many of their goals last season. I think he was responsible for, let me see, I wrote it down in my notes here, 54% of Everton's goals last season. He got 16 and he got 6 assists, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So 54% of their goals came from him. So I personally think that he... can he continue that form? Yes, I think he can. But Rafa's going to have to, I think, share the load a little bit, because if Dominic Calvert-Lewin was to get injured or whatever, then they've got a bit of a problem, Everton, in my opinion. But certainly the opening fixtures, not just the first 5, and we look into the short term, but the first 10 fixtures, we're talking 3 months worth of fixtures here, outside of that game week 7, look really, really good for Everton. So if Rafa's going to get off to a good start, he's got absolutely the fixtures to be able to do it. The fixture ticker has been very kind to Rafa, very kind. Let's have a look at some individual players that we might want to look at then. So here are all of the FPL assets for Everton coming into the new season. The 2 that immediately jump out, and it won't shock you to see that they are slightly more faded out than the other players on this graphic here, and that's because they're currently in my draft. Now listen guys, we have 5 or 6 weeks to go until FPL is live, or we kick off in the Premier League. So FPL is live, but we don't kick off for 5 or 6 weeks. So in reality, Listen, you've got plenty of time to change your team or whatever, but in my first draft, when I first put it together, my gut feel was Luca Dean looked pretty good at 5.5 for me. I like the look of him. Of course, we've already mentioned the fact that they've got to improve their home form defensively, but he's likely to be on most set pieces. Be interesting to see what Benitez says in the pre-season about his squad, particularly around Gylfi Sigurdsson, who actually played a reasonable, he was a reasonable part of the team. He was in the team quite a lot, Gylfi Sigurdsson. He was top for key passes with 44, along with, actually, Luca Digne. Both of those guys were top for Everton for key passes last season with 44 each. And if Sigurdsson is going to get a lot of game time, then maybe that it impacts Luca Digne. But if Gylfi isn't on the pitch, Digne is likely to dominate those set pieces. He got 9 assists last season, Digne, which was, I think, top amongst all Everton players. So if you're going to we talk about creativity with Sigurdsson, James Rodriguez, Richarlison, Digne, 9 assists. And of course, a lot of that's going to come from set pieces. So, and I think that was second amongst defenders. I think only to Luke Shaw, or maybe it was Trent, don't know. But second for Digne last season amongst assists for defenders. So he looks really, really good. And even just when you watch him and you look at him from an eye test perspective, he marauds forward, doesn't he, and joins that attack from left back. So I really like Luca Digne at 5.5. So definitely got my eye on him. Lots of good options around that price bracket, by the way. Luke Shaw also coming in there. And of course, you could go maybe a little bit more up to the likes of Diaz at Manchester City. But at 5.5, I think Luca Digne, if Benitez can sort them out defensively, particularly with that nice looking run over the first 10 game weeks, and I'm backing Benitez can do that, by the way, Luca Digne could be really good. Let's look elsewhere. The other one that caught my eye, obviously, Dominic Calvert-Lewin at 8 million. Now, I was kind of 50-50 with whether I was going to put him in my first draft at all, to be honest with you. Loads of great value in the forward bracket around that price bracket. So if you look at the likes of Ollie Watkins, he's in there. You could go all the way down to 6.5 and pick an Ivan Toney. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin at 8 million represents, I think, reasonable value, particularly when you consider that Richarlison is 7.5 there, who's also a forward, but is probably going to play on that left flank, I suspect. Benitez has got a bit of a penchant for hard-working wingers, and I think if he can get the most out of Richarlison, because would I categorise Richarlison as a hard-working winger? I guess on his day, yes, but Everton fans, get in the comments below, let me know what sort of season you're expecting Richarlison to have. If Benitez can get the most out of him and can get him up in that work rate on a regular basis, then I think he's got a big part to play down that left flank. And if he can, that will not just benefit Richarlison at 7.5 as a forward, but that will also benefit Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And as I said before, so important to that Everton attack and so involved all the time whenever they score goals. And if you remember rightly, Calvert-Lewin got off to an absolute flyer at the beginning of last season. He started like a house on fire. And he's not playing a lot of time for England. Obviously, Southgate's picking so far, at time of recording, we're about to play the Ukraine game on Saturday, the quarter-final. So it remains to be seen whether Calvert-Lewin gets much time for England. But right now, Southgate doesn't seem to fancy him. So he's not getting a lot of game time for England. Whether you can call that a rest or not, I don't know, because he's still going to be training with the squad, I guess. But he's not playing a lot of games. So he's going to come into the season relatively fresh, I guess you'd say. Let's see whether Benitez can get him back from that England squad in a reasonable condition, ready for the pre-season. But 16 goals and 6 assists for Calvert-Lewin last season, not to be sniffed at. I was expecting him to come in at probably 8.5, so I think he's possibly a little bit underpriced. And at 8 million, in my team right now, and even if he doesn't start in my team in game week 1, absolutely on my radar, I'm going to be on my watch list without a doubt. He also had 31 big chances last season, which is twice as many as any other teammate. So, listen, if there are going to be goals for Everton in those first 10 games, he's probably going to get it. So let's see. If Benitez can find some form, why not? Why couldn't Dominic Calvert-Lewin get off to the start that he made at the beginning of last season? Just a quick word on Richarlison and 7.5. Listed as a forward, which puts me off a little bit. Had they moved him back into midfield at 7.5 or even put him at 8 million, he'd have been in the sort of bracket of the Havertz. He'd been in the Havertz bracket then, wouldn't he? And maybe he's worth a conversation then. But at 7.5 as a forward, I think you're going to go and pay the extra 0.5 for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I suspect. The only thing that might sway me towards Richarlison is that I think he's the penalty taker when Sigurdsson's not on the pitch, I think. And again, Everton fans, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I just think they've got his price wrong, FPL. But I just think if FPL had maybe put him back into the midfield, would that have been the right thing to do? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. But if he was a midfielder at that price, or even 8 million, he's then in the conversation. But you've only got 3 forward spots, remember, and one of them is probably going to be Dominic Calvert-Lewin over Richarlison, I suspect. 13 goals last season, which was the same as he got the season before. So, listen, he's ticking over, right? 13 goals for a 7.5 forward. Probably not too bad, but I expect him to become a reasonably key figure. If Benitez goes for that 4-2-3-1 setup, as I'm expecting, I think he'll be in the 3 on the left behind Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But again, as I say, DCL's going to be the one up front, isn't he, in that 4-2-3-1? And if he's got 3 players buzzing around him, I expect him to benefit. Elsewhere, let's look at some other players. Holgate at 4.5, I expect to see some game time. And Coleman even at 5.0. Bit unlucky with injuries last season, wasn't he? But he kind of came back into the team. I think a couple of assists between sort of last third of the season when he returned from injury. So we've seen before Coleman do pretty well in FPL. And I think he's the team captain as well. So at 5.0, could you save an extra 0.5 over Digne by selecting Coleman? Maybe if you're really scratching around for budget, if you really need that 0.5, then maybe go for Coleman. But Digne still looks good value for me at 0.5 more. Look at the points difference there. Despite what I said about Coleman's injuries, and yes, okay, you could factor that in, but 40 odd points there more last season, Digne. And again, if you are really scratching around for budget, then 4.5 Holgate. Have a look at him, but also I'm expecting Benitez to come in and make a couple of signings. Maybe Ben White, as I suggested before, maybe elsewhere, so keep an eye on that. Elsewhere in the midfield, I don't think I'm going to be looking at James. I don't think. At 7 million, again, he sort of be vying for a spot in my squad against the likes of Rafinha in that 6.5 slot. Just think there's far too much better value than James Rodriguez. And again, very much Ancelotti's player, so let's see how Benitez gets on with him. And the rest of the team, I don't think I'm looking at the likes of Davies or Alan or Gomez. A lot of these players are defensive-minded. So it's Sigurdsson if you really want to go into the midfield. Otherwise, I think you're looking at Digne, and I think you're looking at Dominic Calvert-Lewin for your drafts in Game Week 1, guys. So there we go. That's Everton in a nutshell. 2 key players on my radar, with some others maybe on the periphery. But don't overlook them. The first 5 fixtures look great. The first 10 fixtures look great. Can Benitez get it right? Let me know in the comments below how you think Everton are going to start the season. Will Dominic Calvert-Lewin start the season like a house on fire, like he did last season? And if he did, 8 million is looking fantastic value. Guys, hit that subscribe button if you're new to FPL Family. Loads more videos coming between now and kickoff for all of the other clubs in the Premier League, alongside other videos that Sam and I will be doing. Make sure you don't miss out by subscribing. Hit the little notify bell as well. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep tinkering and see you soon. Cheers.